the man who virtually saved your life passed away on
I consider
on
Bud a
Saturday
friend.
morning.
Yeah.
Well, he should.
Yep.
You were having a nervous breakdown in his presence.
I wasn't
right?
having a nervous breakdown.
And you were having something at Green Bay
It
outside
was,
Lambeau.
I guess as you would look back on it, you'd call it an anxiety attack.
Anxiety attack.
I was standing in front of the locker room after the Vikings played Green Bay, and the floor was going up and down.
Yes.
I mean, I was losing it. I thought, what's going on here? Bud took one look at me and said, get in the trainer's room.
Yeah, it's amazing how he could read the room. Huh?
Yeah.
He was always, those dead gaze looked kind of like it was going out in the distance, but he saw everything. And, it's, as we've been saying, Sid was 100 and he died, and we were surprised, and now Bud is 95 and we're shocked. Thursday, I saw Mike Grant at the Bob Hagan event, and he showed up to speak for Bud because he said Bud wasn't feeling real well, but there was no real concern that he was.
I hate to say this because I love him so dearly, but if you want to go with our leaders chronologically, who's next?
Yeah.
Might be Louis. Louis getting up there.
Louis 84. Yeah. Louis. Well, if he don't slow down, he
did the hockey tournament.
He's in 5 different cities every 2 weeks.
He did wait until the early Sunday to get on that plane back to Florida. That was great.
I'm just saying, who is there besides Sid and Bud?
Who's next?
Then where do you go?
Who's next? Yeah,
Louis.
I wrote Sunday, Sid, Bud, and Bernsey in 2.5 years, and there is. I don't use the word.
Let's put it this way. Louis is the
current
current dean. Let's put it that way.
Yes, he is. You're right. The next guy that's irreplaceable.
Right.
The next, as far as his history.
That's it.
His historical value is.
And it's very ironically very similar. The U of M, the local playing, local management, local always being around.
Yeah, this is one of the hardest guys to decipher of them all, though, Bud, because he was not an open book. Until later in life, he was pretty much an open book. But I loved Bob Hagan's story on Thursday talking about him about the garage sale. You heard this one, right?
Oh, yeah.
When this kid from Channel 9 that they sent out to do this story on the garage sale, he was like 23-year-old, probably early summer intern, and didn't really know who Bud was, but was sent out there. And he said, Coach Grant, how much money did you make off this garage sale last year? And Bud stares at him for like,
oh God,
5-10 seconds and said, "What are you, from the IRS?" and then the guy laughs.
Yeah.
And he's waiting for the follow-up. There is no follow-up.
There's no
that
follow-up.
was the answer.
So like 20 seconds later, the kid stumbles around and asks some other question. But
you remember Skilly.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Skillet, yeah.
Dear fake Mayor Patrick and morons. Mm-hmm. Late 2005, I was tasked with lining up the speaker for our church men's club's annual winter sports shirt stag. That would be at Nativity. Mm-hmm. A beer and a brat event that features a local sports personality or a local sports personality speaking engagement that serves beer and brats. In addition, traditionally, the event was a cigar-friendly event that we held in the school's cafeteria until 2006.
Well, you better cut out the cigars to start with.
Why don't you step all over this thing I'm going to write?
All right.
Back to my task. I thought, how do I get in touch with such a legendary human as Bud Grant? So I picked up the phone. I called the Vikings headquarters. A female voice answered, and when I asked if she knew the best way for me to reach Mr. Grant, she simply stated, sure. Coach Grant maintains an office here and schedules his own appointments. Please hold on. I'll transfer you. Mm-hmm. Excellent, right? I got his voicemail. Damn it. I thought I got screened out and we'll never hear from him. Fast forward a few days and I get a call. Hi, this is Bud Grant. I had left a fairly detailed message, so after I quickly gathered my thoughts, we got right to the point. I asked about available Fridays, and we nailed down Feb 17, 2006. Then I thought I would recap the plan. I mentioned that generally the speaker shares their 30 to 45-minute story, followed by a Q&A, and that we serve beer and brats, and that it is a cigar-smoking event. Without hesitation, he firmly said, "Not if you want me to speak." I struggled to regain my courage, and I choked out, "Pardon me?" He replied, "Not if you want me to speak. You know I'm an adamant anti-smoker, so if you want me to speak, there's going to be no smoking." I swallowed hard as best as I could. I croaked out the words, "Yes, sir, I understand. That will not be a problem." He actually did us a favor. As for many attendees, this has made for a much more pleasurable event. For 18 years now, we have been following what we call Bud's Law. No smoking until the speaker has left the building or until we get their blessing to light up. We have since taken it one step further in that we are saving tons of money by not having to rent the convoluted HVAC system to blow the smoky air to the outside. It looked like something out of the movie Brazil. Anyhow, now we set up an outdoor tent for the guys to enjoy their tobacco. Rest in peace, Coach Grant. Thank you for everything you have done for us. But that's Bud. Hey, I'm not speaking there if you're smoking.
That's another question I wish I had asked him. When did the anti-smoking start? Was it lifelong?
Probably.
Yeah. But I mean, imagine being a hardcore non-smoker in the late 40s at the University of Minnesota. I'm sure the guys were Nomalini and the boys were loading up in the locker room.
Smoked.
No, I don't think he did either.
So there's another commonality.
Yeah, Bud, was just hardcore about it. But I wonder when that started. Probably all life. He thought it was. Maybe he probably had a relative die young or something, and they blame lung cancer.
Just said stay away from it. Yeah.
I just think even the way he died was Bud. Just no fuss about it. By the way, I'm dead.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yes, and a lot of people are having, Bud is in heaven with Sid and Bernsey. Bud was agnostic.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was not. Bud figured you got every minute you could out here, and then whatever happens, happens. So he was not. Sid. I don't know what would happen to him, and then Bernsey. They were talking about Bernsey too. Well. If there is such a thing, Bernsey's still doing penance for the Schnelker. He hasn't made her yet. It's only been a year and a half or so. So
you did have the great line though. Speaking of Twitter, when you said he did us a favor by passing away on Sunday morning,
early Saturday morning.
I
have not seen the Pioneer Press for Sunday, but I am sure they went all out.
Yeah.
It was old times at the Star Tribune. They cleaned out like 6 pages and 7 pages. Kent Youngblood did the Bud advance obit in 2003.
Wow.
He wrote the thing, and then it was updated, obviously. But he came out and said, "Bud, I want to do this long story on you," and blah, blah, blah. And he sits down, and he gets, Bud's out at the office. He got nothing else to do. And he gave him 2 hours, but he starts off saying, "This is for my obituary, isn't it?" But you didn't have to tell him because, Youngblood didn't want to call him up and say, "This is for your obituary."
One of my favorite stories was just recently learned. That was when Dennis wrote about his
the
Armistice Day blizzard.
I'm looking forward to Dennis's Thursday. Dennis will probably have a Thursday column on him because, there's no question of the Sid Bud relationship. I mean, that they were very close, and as Sid said, but as Bud said, "Why were you such good friends with Sid?" Sid had a car. That's what he said. So
Bud said the family car didn't work half the time.
No.
They took buses.
Yes.
Yeah.
And, plus in Superior, Wisconsin. But down here, he's a gopher. He had no money. He had no money back from the war. But
Sid, that's the moon.
Yeah.
God, I love that story.
What, that streetlight story?
They're stuck out in the winter, flat tire in Asco, Minnesota, and Sid starts running towards the light. and Bud said, "No, that's the move. Long trip, Sid. That's the move." And I would imagine for comic relief, part of Bud being around Sid probably was comic relief to see when he tried to do something. When he tried to fix something or do something or because the complete opposite of. Anyway, but Dennis's, I'm looking forward to Dennis's obituary. He was the next closest guy he's ever been to on this, at least in the Minneapolis newspaper, is Dennis. He and Dennis are really good friends. So
I was able to be liked by two guys.
Yeah.
Mock and Grant.
Yeah.
And I probably shouldn't have been. Because
especially Bud. You cost him a draft choice.
I cost Bud a draft choice.
That's right.
And he just looked at me with some amusement. How could you be this stupid? But he would tell me often, he told me, because I think he sympathized with my anti-dome stuff.
Okay, really? Yeah, well,
he told me, I hate going there. I don't want to go in there. I don't want to go in there. But he said, and I said, well, then say that. Let's say it. He's like, I can't.
Okay, Bud's 37 years since he coached his last game.
Yep.
Would we remember, would he be so front of mind, obviously would have gotten a good obit, if he had not coached out on the frozen tundra for the first 15 of those?
No.
I mean, we would not remember.
That defined him.
If we wouldn't, yes, it defined him, and we hoped that it defined us.
Yes.
It didn't.
No.
But we wanted to be the same hardy folk. Mm-hmm. And, the guy standing there, no heaters, steam blowing out everybody's mouths, and him just standing there looking and appearing.
And he knew perfectly well what he was doing. When he came out with the golf shirt and the short sleeves.
It's fantastic.
He told people, he said, get the cameras ready. They're going to love this.
Yeah. Bobby Hagan, Thursday night, confirmed that.
Yeah.
They had asked Sid a week in advance to come out for the coin toss.
Yeah.
And on Monday, which is 6 days earlier, it was like 40 degrees in town, and Bud called him up and said, I'll go out there in a light jacket and then take it off for the corn. And Hagan said, Bud, the forecast has got, it's going to be like 25 below wind chill on Sunday or Saturday, whichever it was, Saturday or Sunday, I can't remember.
Yeah.
And Bud said, that's okay. Yeah. And then when they got ready to do it, he forgot about the jacket.
Right.
And he went out. He said, I'm going out in shirt sleeves. And Hagan said, Bud, and he said, your body can stand anything for 10 minutes.
Right.
That was his deal. So you can put up with anything.
And that didn't kill him.
For 10 minutes. No, hell no, that didn't kill him. And what it did was tell 2 generations later what their great-grandparents and grandparents were talking about with Bud.
Right.
It told all those people that said...
The message just didn't get through to the kicker, the field goal.
That's right. That's right. And that's another reason that I still say we should have put him on put him in a cab and sent him directly to the airport after he missed that field goal instead of sending him love notes from first graders.
I'll give you a good column. You probably already thought of it. I wonder what Alan Page thinks.
Your guy Thomason got a very lukewarm quote from him.
Oh.
He called him, but he said he was a Minnesota institution and blah blah blah.
So Alan was a little gracious, but didn't have much to say.
It was gracious, but it was not. Yeah. It's not like getting. I didn't talk to Jim. Jim Marshall didn't want to do an interview, but I exchanged texts with him, and he said, "I'm too sad. I'm not." He isn't doing real well health wise, and he said, "I'm too sad." But call me in a couple of days.
I was covering him when Bud had Alan's belongings put in a cardboard box and brought to his front door. And that was how Bud got rid of Alan Page.
And I've told this story numerous times.
Because he didn't like Page losing weight.
No, he got down to 225. Yeah. He was the best defensive tackle in the league.
Because Page was smart enough to know I want to live a while.
Yeah, well, but here's what we have to remember about Bud. as long as Alan Page was great, he let him get away with murder.
That's true.
He'd go to camp late because of law school, and he was he'd miss an exhibition game or two back then when you didn't miss exhibition games. As long as you were great, if you had some personal habits that might involve drugs or something, we didn't do a full investigation. But as soon as you were no longer great, then you could be out the door. But when it was time for a guy to go, he'd give a guy 2 extra years. Usually one of his noble old veterans. Yeah. But then he'd call him in and say, "You're done. We're going to have a nice little ceremony for you, Wally, and you're going to retire." And Jim Marshall, he didn't retire him till '79, I think. But he called Jim in and said that that's enough. But Marshall, he loved Marshall, and Marshall loved him. I mentioned this. Who sent out sympathy to him and as a Minnesota icon? Carl Anthony Towns.
Oh, really?
Yes, and I thought,
that's bold.
Boy, I said, Cat.
Yeah. Bud would think poorly of you, son.
Bud, Cat, you and Bud would not have gotten along.
You're right.
You would not. You were,
you
missing. He saw George Mikan play a playoff game with a broken leg.
That's right.
He had a broken leg and he tried, or a broken foot, and he tried to play with a cast
So
on.
you think
Cat, he would not have been in on 3.5 months missing with a calf injury.
But Cat is back to basketball activities.
Yeah, any month now.
What's that mean?
You think Bud seeing Carl Anthony Towns brag on social media about how much his outfit cost? He might have had an
did he
issue
have
with
that lately?
He did. About a
Bud
week
did
ago.
not suffer fools gladly.
Oh, no, he didn't. Why? You were around. What was it about Charlie McKenna that drove him nuts?
That McKenna was a fool.
Okay, because he would ask goofy questions.
Just a smart ass, know-it-all. Bud didn't like him at all.
Oh God, he was the only guy that I ever saw get to Bud.
Yep.
Of government. I mean, Bud.
Yeah.
And same thing with TK and Jeff Linehan. He just couldn't stand him.
Whatever happened to McKenna, I wonder?
Don't know.
He was a beat writer at the
Tribune.
Tribune.
A young guy from
East,
good college and something, but he was a, kind of.
He
like
was
a
way
war
above
protester.
football. He was way above football, and Bud sensed that, and it drove him crazy. Drove him nuts. Neither of you and I were covering in '67, but the story had to be the veterans who had this crazy man as their coach for the first 6 years, Van Brocklin, a guy who would get drunk the night before, get in a fight with Klobuchar, and then come up to practice and be in a bad mood and practice him for 3 hours, and the most volatile character of all time. And then this guy comes up and shows up and looks at everybody and says about 50 words to him, and then the next thing he says is, okay, now we're going to practice lining up for the national anthem, and stuff. I mean, that kind of stuff had to be what a change for those guys. They had to love it. They ended up loving it because they didn't kill him in practice. Right. Hell, the Ducks might be flying. He might not have practice. He didn't sleep in the office.
No, he didn't.
I think it was Foreman. I think he was interviewed locally and said he was the only coach that hated training camp more than we did.
Oh, yeah.
They were noted for being the last to report.
And I think, did Lynn make him start a mini camp about mid-'80s? They never had a mini camp until...
And it lasted 10 minutes.
5 years after 5 years. He wasn't going to come down from the cabin for mini camp, for God's sake.
He did cling to some stuff that he had to... That reality made him change. Water, for example.
Yes, he had to start giving water.
I mean, we lost
people.
a guy, for God's
Corey
sake.
Stringer, and that wasn't him coaching, but yes, he finally had to
Because the joke was they get water when there's a cattle line.
Yeah, cattle, and that was true. Yeah. That was true.
They got water in Mankato when there was a cattle line. Well, that ain't funny anymore.
No, it's not. And they had some hot days and stuff like that. But then again, I'm not defending that, but the number of grueling practices he had compared to everybody
Or
else.
few, yeah.
I remember when Charles Johnson was a nose tackle that had been a good player with the Eagles, and they picked him up, and he was there with Vermeil, who won a Super Bowl, won 2 actually, but used to beat him. I mean, they were just vicious hitting practices all season long. And he came to Mankato, and I remember talking to him. He'd been there about 2 weeks, and he said, "This is heaven, man. This is, you go out there, you run around a little bit, you hit for 10 minutes, and then you go on in, or you do.
It was almost the Gagliardi school of practice.
Yes, right. He didn't believe in getting guys hurt in training camp, and which was again the opposite of Van Brocklin too. I'm sure I think most of them loved playing for him because he didn't get involved in their personal habits.
Right.
B, as long as you played, he didn't really.
Was he that
he's
way
not gonna
because
beat
he
you up.
was a player?
Yeah, he always famously said, we were going to, the Gophers, now this is before my time, it was 1949, but the World War II, the Rose Bowl, a contract between the Big Ten and the Pac-9 or whatever it was then, didn't start till after the war. And Bierman, in 49, the Gophers had this great team with a bunch of guys that ended up in the NFL, and Nomalini and all these guys. And they were going to go to the Rose Bowl that year, and it was only like the 3rd or 4th year. And people had some money in their pockets after World War II again, and everybody was really excited. And they went out and they went on the road. They had back-to-back games against Michigan and Ohio State, and they went on the road and they beat Michigan, which was like the big thing. And Bierman came back and practiced the hell out of him he said they beat him up for 3 days to really get us ready and toughen us up for Ohio State. But always said we hit the field and we didn't have anything left, and Ohio State crushed them, and they didn't. And then they lost again, I think, and they didn't go to the Rose Bowl. But that's a famous collection of players. I think Tonemaker was on that team, and Gordy Solta, and all these guys that ended up in the NFL, and that stuck with Bud. Don't over practice guys. Don't beat them up in practice.
If losing 4 Super Bowls wounded him emotionally, you never knew it.
My favorite.
I don't think it wounded him.
One of my 5 favorite quotes. Somebody told me, he was asked about that, and he said, "Yeah, but those 4 guys are all dead." They beat him. They mentioned the coaches. They beat me, but I outlived them. I'll make that trade.
Because he did not like Lombardi, right? Didn't he?
Oh, I don't think he even knew him. He only coached against him 1 year.
Oh, really?
I think, yeah.
I thought I remember reading that somewhere.
I don't know why Bud would have disliked him.
Yeah, he probably would have never met him, probably.
Okay.
He was an Eastern guy and then NFL. And, I don't know. But he hated Shula's the guy he hated because
or maybe that's what I'm thinking of.
Shula was the head of the competition committee. Used to drive him crazy. Like they'd have that Shula was down there making the rules that would benefit Shula. He'd drive him. That drove him nuts. But I can't remember him. I think he became very bitter about Stram after he saw the
clip.
NFL films things of Stram. Because when they got him back here for the season opener the next year, they buried him. They just killed him. And, of course, Sid and some of the other fellas tried to make it – we're now even. Well, they won
really
the Super Bowl. They won the Super Bowl.
A little bit of a different game.
Regular season opener.
Right.
Yes, but they did purposely kick their ass, and it is one of the worst things that happened to them was Cap. Cap left them, and they had 70 and 71. They were unbelievably good defensively those 2 years, but their quarterback play was, look up the 71 stats. It's unbelievable. They're like one of the greatest defenses in NFL history. and one of the worst offenses ever. They had a game out here against Green Bay where they won 3-0. Green Bay had 300 and some yards, and they had 60 or something. It was the defense was Alan Page in '71 was the MVP of the league, and they were one and done in the playoffs, and they were 11-3.
Because didn't he also say that the '77 team was his best one, the one that lost to
I
Dallas?
don't think so. I don't know if he did. Nobody else agreed with him. Stewie Voigt always told me that the '76 team that played Oakland was the
best team?
No, that they were on the way downhill.
Oh, okay.
He
Gotcha.
said the '75 team that lost to the Cowboys was like zenith, and then they started downhill, Stu said. So that's the way. But it is astounding that we still talk about him like it was 3 weeks ago. You know, I mean, his coaching.
That's why I think his death was so nice. Yeah. I'm dead now.
Yeah, right. In the morning, he actually did wake up in the morning. I was wondering if he maybe fell asleep. A friend of mine, a guy who does the impersonation of me, Chad Oslin, he's a big Viking historian. Bud Grant was announced as the new Viking coach on Saturday, March 11th at 10 a.m., 1967. And he died on Saturday, March 11, 2023, at almost simultaneously the same time. That's just somehow mystic.
Who did Fink send to the airport to pick him up?
Bill McGrain.
How will I know him? Hey, the guy looks like a sheriff.
Yeah, no, he says, how would I know it's him? He says, he'll be the guy that looks like the town marshal.
Yeah, the town marshal.
Which from the Western movies back then, you know, Gary Cooper walking down the street and it was a perfect description.
Right.
I mean, tall,
crew
gray, looking at, and he was he gray when
I was going to ask, was he born with gray hair?
I don't know. I think
no,
he
in the
was
early
already,
pictures he had dark hair.
but he had the crew cut. You know, he had the crew cut all the time. And you know what? You know, he had 6 kids.
That's all they give me.
And he had 6 kids, and I wonder how much yelling he had to do. I got a hunch all he had to do was stare at them too, right?
Yeah.
What a great asset that is for a coach. You don't have to yell.
Nope.
You just have to look.
Oh, I'm in trouble now.
Yeah,
Oh, boy.
right.
And physically he could get away with it too because he was imposing.
Yes, he was. He
big
was tall.
and
He was
fit.
always lean.
Yeah.
If you look back at him, though, the pictures when he was a college athlete and stuff, he's a good-looking guy, man.
Yeah.
And I think
There he is riding around with Sid.
Yeah.
He had a car.
I'm not sure when he got married, but beforehand, the legend is he experimented.
Oh.
So, as
one would want to do at that
most
age.
athletes would. But, yes. I like the story. I wrote this on Twitter, but he pitched in Gordon, Wisconsin, where he also has his cabin, one summer. And part of his compensation was 8 plots at the local cemetery.
Right.
8 plots. And Mike Grant, years later, asked him, Bud, you didn't even have children yet then. How'd you know you were going to have 6 kids and you and Mom? He says, 8. How did you know 8? He says, no, that's all they'd give me.
Because, I love him.
He never came in with a low ask, I'm sure, for anything.
No, plus I've always said, and I still love him, if you're on Desert Island and there was one turkey leg, you ain't getting it.
No.
And the only guy in the world that Sid would give it to would be Bud.
Right.
To stay
Now,
in
is
good
his
with him.
family, will they use those plots? I wonder.
Well, I think Bruce, one of his sons died. I think the wife's up there too.
Oh, then that's what they'll use.
I think Bruce.
What
is
the
up
hell?
there.
Bud will say they're paid for. Let's go.
I think Bruce got ALS. I think he did.
Okay.
He was an old quarterback a great quarterback at Duluth, UMD, and played for Miloski, who was one of Bud's best buddies. Bud loved Miloski. The one thing I should have done that I never did, being an idiot. The Billy Bye was from that 1949 team. Mm-hmm. Very successful guy, but he had a place up on Bay Lake.
Yeah, he drowned on Bay Lake.
Did he? Really?
Fell off a pontoon boat.
Wow.
Yeah.
He had, every year, they had a reunion up there, like before training camp started. They had a reunion, and all those guys came back. Gagne and the
Would
whole
Bud
crew.
participate?
Oh, Bud would show up too. Bud would laugh and have a
Wow.
couple of drinks and.
No,
never-
he didn't have
never-
a couple of drinks.
He might have had a couple of 3-2 beers or
Yeah.
something. I don't know. He had 5 drinks in his life, probably.
Right.
But can you imagine the storytelling?
Oh,
Yeah.
my God.
Oh, I never went up there. I knew about it. I just never occurred to me. There might have been a ball game, so I went and, wrote that the Twins should have won that 3-2 game instead of going up there and hearing a book's worth of stories. So anyway,
Well,
what else?
Rest
Hey,
in peace, Bud.
we now know what the Wild's problem was on offense.
They weren't tight enough.
Kirill
Kirill.
was screwing up the operation. They got. What do they got? 8 goals since they got rid. 7 goals in 2 games. 8 goals since they got rid of them.
They beat San Jose. They shouldn't have lost to Arizona.
That's twice in a row.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Arizona got rid of half their team
Yeah.
at the trading deadline. I think we don't play well in ramshackled college arenas. We have a hard time thinking, but it is amazing. All of a sudden, they had Kirill. He was scoring. He was the only guy they had scoring goals. Now they've had 8 goals in 2 games.
You watch Minnetonka and Edina, you might as well have been watching an NHL game in terms of the skill
were that
level,
good.
how it's improved.
Oh, God.
Oh, my God.
It's unbelievable.
It's just
Minnetonka had some
amazing.
big kids on
Yep.
that squad.
Yep.
Well, Judd is convinced that the best line in the state of Minnesota, including the Wild, is Cooley, Snuggerud, and Nice over at the university.
Really?
The first line over there, and they're all, Cooley was the 3rd overall or 4th overall. Nice is going to be in the NHL next year.
Well, and who's the
Snuggy's kid? It just fires the hell out
They
of
also
the
have the
puck.
kid that'll be with the Wild, the second.
Brock Faber,
Faber,
the defenseman.
yeah.
The defenseman. But that's how good they are now.
It's amazing.
I didn't get to, I was writing. I didn't watch the game because I don't. My TV at home doesn't have channel 45, and I haven't figured out how to watch it.
At my house, it's on 12. Channel 12
Yeah.
is channel 45.
Well, I stream YouTube, and it's not on there.
I
can't
had
find
some
it.
duties that called me away from the TV at another person's house, so I had to watch it on a computer.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, I probably could have done that. So
Yeah.
I don't. But I know last year, Andover and who did they play? Finals.
Andover
was-
beat Maple Grove last
It
year.
was fantastic final.
You know, and the
And,
last time an urban public school won the tournament was 1970.
Yep, I was there.
Southwest.
Southwest. I covered 2 state tournaments as the beat writer. The '69, which was the
Still
coming
out at
out,
Met
the,
Sports
the
Center
coming
then.
out that first went to Met Sports Center the
Yep.
first year. It was really the coming out party for the hockey tournament because Henry Boucher and Edina in the finals and.
Was Antonovich in that tournament, Coleraine? No, he was 68, I think.
Yeah, well, he and Henry were coming out the same year.
Yeah.
Greenway might, I think Greenway got beat. I remember that like 5 or 6 of the teams were wearing green and
But
white.
you go back to the early 60s, and even teams that made the tournament still had a kid or two on the team who couldn't skate.
Well, plus, were they playing? They were playing 15 minutes at least, or maybe not 15.
Probably 12.
They might have been, but they only had, Warroad was skating 2 lines and 3 defensemen, and one of the defensemen didn't play. So I mean, you didn't need as many players as they have now.
International Falls always used 3 lines during their dynasty.
Oh, they were something.
Yeah.
Man, they were something.
4, 5, and 6.
Again, worst mistake in newspaper history. Poor old Dave Andrews, a young guy. I was a copy boy there. International Falls Johnson in the finals. Mm-hmm. And the Tribune Sunday circulated to the point that they were going to fly papers to International Falls with the 15,000 papers to International Falls to deliver them and then also sell them because they know in the finals on Saturday night.
Okay.
So they were going to get the score in. And I think it was it a 1-0 game, Johnson Falls? I don't know. It was a low-scoring game. Anyway, the Falls wins, and that was part of their championship run. And and they're ready to roll downstairs, and Dave puts in the Johnson Wins headline, and they fly it to International Falls. There was a lot of silence around here. There was, a lot of that. Just look at a guy and shake his head thing, it was not the,
It's much to the same way when I'll get a call at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon from this guy. I can't believe you put that in the bleeping show title. Kind of the same reaction that I'll get.
Well, I bet people in the falls have kept
I bet
those.
they got those.
Oh, yeah.
I bet they're hanging in a
collector's
salon.
item.
A bar or two.
Yeah.
That's the, the mock nod of the head. I always Rob Wilfong. I got to tell this again. Rob Wilfong is the mock's goes to California, ends up with Rob Wilfong as one of his second basemen. He loved Wilfong, but he puts Wilfong in the pinch run in the ninth inning, and there's one out, and Reggie's on deck, and whoever flies out to center field, Wilfong tags up. He gets thrown out at second to end the game with Reggie on deck, 1 run behind. And he didn't play for 3 weeks. And Fong told me about every 3 innings, Mock could turn around and just shake his head. Never screamed at him, never yelled at him. Just went, I traded for you.
Yep.
I brought you out here,
Yep.
and you would do this to me?
You see who was on deck.
There's a little of that. There's a little of Mock in Bud. Bud.
Very much so.
Yeah, except Mock.
More than a little.
Mock would show his emotions more. Yeah. But the same.
How long did their tenures overlap?
Well, Bud was the coach when Gene was here from 76 to 80. I don't know. And I'm sure Sid, was big buddies with both of them. I'm sure he had them at dinner together and stuff. I never asked, to be honest. But Mock and, Sid, Bud never apologized for being Sid's friend.
Right.
Mock was the story when I'm sitting in the dugout with him at 4:15 and the phone rings in the dugout like 50 times and he doesn't budge. Lights up another cigarette. Starts ringing again like 2 minutes later, 20 times. And I finally said, "You gonna answer that?" And he said, "How would you like to wake up every morning in the summer knowing one thing you had to do that day was talk to Sid Hartman?" And he meant answer his questions, which were the same questions he asked him yesterday.
Every day.
Bud would have never said that. Bud was willing to.
He might have thought it.
But he wouldn't have said it.
But he wouldn't have let you know.
No. Anyway, Bud, it was kind of a kick. I got to know him better the last 10, 12 years.
And several people asked, because when you were with us on Friday, you had said at Bobby's going away thing that someone went down, but obviously it was not Bud.
No, it was not Bud.
Because several people
I
had
found
emailed
out
and
it
asked
was
that.
somebody who had been overserved. But they were worried enough about him that they called an ambulance, but I don't think he ever got in.
Okay.
Somebody was drunk. Actually, they were sober when Bobby started talking, but hour and 10 minutes later, they were hammered. I was the only one in the room when he said, "Oh, one more thing," and I went,
Yay!
All right, let's go here.
he wouldn't have made it.
Oh, God, no.
Hour 10.
I don't think I would.
No, but it was like, Bob, okay, they're running me out of here. I ain't going down quiet.
Well, I think that's a fair assumption, Patrick, because at the Diamond Awards, every time, Dick and Audra were presenting another award, Joe assumed, okay, now it's done, right? I can get him now. No, Joe, we got to wait. Patrick's not up till the end.
Yeah. I got out of there in time.
Yes, you did.
Yes. Somebody, I haven't watched it, obviously, but somebody told me there's a small edit.
I informed you of that.
There's a small edit in the...
I recorded it because the first time it was on, the boys wanted to watch you and Joe being on TV, so I recorded it for
shot
them.
or two at Rocco didn't make it.
And we were watching it,
Really?
I said, they got rid of it! And I was so
did?
mad, yes.
That's what I heard. Now, they might have said they needed time, because afterwards, I said... I got a hunch I know what's going to get lost here if they have to cut time on
Where the
this
incision's going to take
Yes,
place.
That's right. All right, bud. We're gonna miss you, you old son of a gun.
Yep.
You have heard me discuss my relationship with Josh Arnold for some time. The reason I advocate that you give Josh a call is simple. Trust and results. Josh has seen it all when it comes to economic and market conditions. As has been said, through all of our relationship, past results do not guarantee future returns. And while that is true, Josh can make sure that your retirement objectives match your investments. You can understand that Josh will make sure you are not paying more in fees than you are seeing in returns. Yes, that is more common than you would like to think. Do yourself a favor and have a booking with Josh for the 48-minute free evaluation. This is a no-obligation meeting. Call Josh at 952-925-5608. You will be glad that you did.
Investment services offered by Josh Arnold Investment Consultant LLC, a security investment advisor. Past performance is no guarantee of future results. All investments involve risk. All comments and opinions are Josh Arnold's and do not constitute investment advice.
Patrick Reusse is a paid endorser.